Hey, you guys. Jesus. I don't even know what that's from. I just hear people doing it. I'm not a movie guy. I've only seen like 20 movies my whole life. But this video right here, this is going to be HJRES 87. This is going to be the complete proceeding debate that happened on the House floor today on April 30th, 2025. It's really long, really interesting, and what HJRES 87 really is, in layman's terms, is a EV mandate on big rigs, service trucks, buses, and what else was it? I think I covered them all. But it is an EV mandate on big rig vehicles or larger heavy duty vehicles. That's what this one is. Now, while you're watching this debate, everything, please comment below. Let me know what you think is going to happen. How will this affect you and I on our everyday lives? I honestly think this is going to affect big rig drivers, owners, delivery truck drivers, service truck drivers, stuff like that, way more than the average light duty and medium duty vehicle drivers. So if you're a big rig driver out there, this one really might affect you. Now, what happened today is HJRES 87 did pass. It's going to move on to the Senate, but as with all of these joint resolutions, they are probably going to end up in court after Trump signs them. So this is not going to be any type of fast process. Now, let's get into this long AF video. Like, subscribe, share, tell her about Scotty's hobbies. Please comment below with your take on this debate, and I'll see you guys at the end.
The joint resolution shall be debatable for 1 hour, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Energy and Commerce or their respective designees. The gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Griffith, and the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Pallone, each will control 30 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Griffith.
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks on the legislation and to insert extraneous material on HJRES 87.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, I yield to myself. May I be recognized to speak to the measure?
The gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I yield to myself such time as I may consume. Madam Speaker, today I rise in support of HJRES 87, a resolution providing for congressional disapproval under Chapter 8 of Title 5, United States Code of the rules submitted by the Environmental Protection Agency relating to California state motor vehicle and engine pollution control standards, California heavy-duty vehicle and engine emission warranty and maintenance provisions, California Advanced Clean Trucks, zero-emission airport shuttles, zero-emission powertrain certification and waiver of preemption notice of decision, sponsored by my friend from the great manufacturing state of Michigan. In general, what makes these California rules have such an outsized impact on the rest of the country is that under Section 177 of the Clean Air Act, other states can opt in to the California standard. So not only does California dominate because of its sheer size, but when a handful of other states opt in, the California standard becomes the de facto national standard for the United States. It's my understanding on just this California EPA waiver for trucks, 10 states, Colorado, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, Oregon, Rhode Island, Vermont, and Washington have opted in to this regulation. This is concerning to me because it seems that California is being given super state status vis-a-vis the other states of the Union. States can opt into a proposal of the privileged state or the super state, but are not able to request a preemption or a waiver from the federal government on their own. This is either the national standard or the California standard. Those are the only two you can have. It does not allow for individual states to become the laboratories of innovation and democracy, as was seen fit and as it was believed to be the case for our federal system. I believe, Madam Speaker, that the states should be equal. I am not so sure that we need a superstate imposing its preference on the rest of the country. If that's what we want, why not cede all authority to California and disband the United States Congress? Either way, having parallel state vehicle regulatory systems is what really causes manufacturers and big fleet operators to be concerned. Now, specifically on this California Advanced Clean Truck Rule. This rule creates a complex credit trading system where truck manufacturers must buy or generate zero-emission truck credits just to have the privilege of doing business in the state. At the end of the day, this rule is very restrictive on traditional diesel-powered trucks. By 2035, this rule ends up requiring electric big rigs to make up 40% of the class sales. Now, I'm not here to tell you that electric trucks don't have their place. We all know they do. Yard trucks in particular might be an application where electric trucks have an advantage, perhaps in certain city delivery situations. Those delivery routes could be done with electric vehicles, but that should be a business decision, not the decision of a waiver granted by bureaucrats from Washington to a super state to dictate to the rest of the country what our policies should be. Unfortunately for the independent owner-operators and small trucking companies, this mandate for electric trucks comes with a very expensive price tag. A new diesel big rig costs about $180,000. Electric big rigs can go anywhere from $200,000 to $400,000. That price tag is going to hit the independent driver, the small owner-operators, and the small fleets hard. Trucking is a relatively small margin business where time on the road equals money. I'm afraid that all of these increased costs could lead to more consolidation in the industry and less competition. Further, these higher rig costs will present a bigger barrier to entry for the owner-operators and small trucking companies who, with current technology, would have more charging downtime, and accordingly, not only are you not able to be on the road, but when you're off-road, you're off for a longer period of time, and time on the road, as I said earlier, equals money. Therefore, it's going to cost more to operate. Now, the big companies might be fine with that, but your smaller companies are going to find it very, very difficult. This regulation throws a wet blanket on truckers' opportunities to share in the American dream of starting their own business, starting out with one truck and building it to 5 and then maybe getting to 10. It gives all the power to the big companies. I believe that this electric truck mandate is going to lead to inefficiency and increased costs on all products that have to be transported over road. So I urge all members to join me in voting in favor of House Joint Resolution 87 and ending this regulatory nightmare. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I reserve.
The gentleman reserved. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in strong opposition to HJRES 87, 88, and 89, the 3 bills that we're considering this afternoon. And like much of what Republicans do here on the House floor, these 3 resolutions are a waste of time and they're going nowhere. And that's because both the Government Accountability Office, the GAO, and the Senate parliamentarian have determined that Congress cannot nullify these waivers using the Congressional Review Act. And yet here we are, Republicans are ignoring these rulings and moving ahead. Again, a giant waste of time. These resolutions are nothing more than a ploy to basically distract hardworking Americans from the fact that President Trump is single-handedly destroying our economy and driving up costs for American families, including on vehicles. Markets are in turmoil. The first quarter report indicated that the American economy is actually contracting. It's not growing, it's actually contracting, getting smaller. American retirement savings are in free fall. Prices for everyday goods continue to rise, all as a result of President Trump's trade war with the entire world. He's at war with the entire world. Trump's tariffs are also expected to drive up the cost of vehicles in the United States by up to $15,000. And Republicans silently sit back and let it happen, bringing up resolutions on the floor that are going nowhere. Now, these illegal CRA resolutions threaten the Clean Air Act waivers of federal preemption that allowed stronger pollution standards for cars and trucks for the state of California. My colleague from Virginia gives the impression that states have to follow California's lead. I don't know that he means that, but he gives that impression. But that is not true. No one is telling any state that they have to follow California. My state of New Jersey decided to, but that's up to the governor and the legislature. In fact, they could withdraw the California standards at any time. New Jersey could if they wanted to. So no one is forcing any state to follow California's lead. My colleague from Virginia, I love him, but he's talking about big government. Well, it used to be that the Republicans believed in states' rights, meaning that the states, little or large, would have their own rights and be able to do their own thing. But he's the one that's talking about big government now because he's suggesting that the federal government is going to preempt everything that California and some other states have done. So these resolutions are a direct attack on over 50 years of Congress and the Environmental Protection Agency recognizing California's and other states that follow long-standing authority to set stronger vehicle emission standards to protect the public health of its residents from the state's unique air quality challenges. Now, why do we let states like California and New Jersey decide this on their own? Because there are different problems in those states with regard to air quality. Right now, over 90% of California residents live in an area plagued by poor air quality. So if California decides that we need more stringent standards because we don't want people to get sick in our state, then they should be allowed to do so. This isn't like pie in the sky. This is based on the fact that the air quality in California is not good. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's true. And that's why they need more stricter standards, and they decide to do that. California started regulating tailpipe emissions actually in 1966, before the Federal Clean Air Act was even enacted. In drafting the Clean Air Act decades ago, Congress recognized California's air quality challenges that demonstrated compelling and extraordinary circumstances justifying more protective standards. And this waiver mechanism also allows other states with challenging air pollution conditions to voluntarily adopt California standards if they feel that it's appropriate. And this has allowed states to be a laboratory of innovation for the auto industry and pioneer emission reduction technologies such as check engine dashboard lights or even the development of zero-emission vehicles. And the standards under threat today would continue that legacy. But these resolutions would completely dismantle that progress at a time when the Trump administration appears to be determined to cede our global leadership in clean transportation to China. None of this has to happen. These resolutions are illegal, plain and simple, and my Republican colleagues were informed weeks ago by the independent, nonpartisan GAO that California's waivers cannot be revoked using the CRA for two reasons. First, EPA's waiver decisions are not rules. Second, even if the waivers were considered rules, they would be rules of particular applicability since they only concern one specific entity, i.e. California. These two factors disqualify the waivers from review under the CRA, and the Senate parliamentarian agreed. So that should have been enough. In other words, the Senate parliamentarian says you can't do this, the GAO says you can't do this, but, again, Republicans are taking the cues from Trump, and he doesn't care what the law is. He just says, do it. And so that's why we're here today. None of this is going to matter. EPA has granted dozens of waivers over 5 decades, and there's a long bipartisan history of recognizing these waivers as orders which the House Republicans are determined to ignore. So what I'm saying, Madam Speaker, is that if they can't do what they're suggesting to do today, because it's illegal, but even if they were able to, it sets a terrible precedent for other waivers and other ability of states to decide on their own what they want to do. If the theory behind these resolutions were to be successful, in other words, using the CRA to nullify orders, House Republicans would set a dangerous precedent that expands the applicability of the CRA, and that would mean countless numbers of executive actions made across the federal government would be at the mercy of the political winds of a vocal few in Congress. States seeking approvals for energy infrastructure projects would be under threat. Leasing decisions for major oil and gas fields could be targeted. States that submit waivers for the Medicaid programs could be up for congressional review under this newly expanded applicability. And this opens up a Pandora's box for Republicans to invalidate other state programs that they deem unfit for their extremist agenda. So they're trying to impose a very extremist federal national standard and basically preempt the states. That's not what Republicans historically do, but this is the age of President Trump. So I think this should ring an alarm bell for everyone in this chamber today. It's waivers for California clean vehicle standards. Tomorrow, it could be a program or project in another state out of favor with Trump or the Republicans. To be clear, the transportation sector is the largest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions in the United States, making up nearly 1/3 of overall pollution. Passing these resolutions would allow more nitrogen oxides, fine particles, and climate-disrupting emissions to poison our air. While it's disappointing that my Republican colleagues are attempting to tear down health protective standards, it's not surprising. Just look at their plans to strip health care from millions of Americans with hundreds of billions of dollars in devastating Medicaid cuts, which I expect next week in our committee. Instead of attacking clean vehicle programs, opposing investments in Americans' electric vehicle manufacturing, and pushing regressive anti-electrification policies, Congress should focus on supporting market innovation, preserving U.S. competitiveness, and providing regulatory certainty for the clean vehicle industry. Otherwise, my colleagues on the other side talk about China, competition from China. Well, everything that President Trump is doing with it is pretty much giving China even more of a runway to be competitive and to win. And in this case, win in the transition to a clean energy economy, especially across the electric vehicle supply chain. So I strongly oppose all of these misguided resolutions. And Madam Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. One from Virginia is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I would just remind my colleague, the gentleman from New Jersey, that we're not here today talking about Medicaid cuts. We're talking about EPA rules that need to be set aside under the Congressional Review Act. Now, you heard him say that, oh, this is all illegal. I find this kind of interesting because for weeks we've heard them railing on executive action. And why haven't the Republicans pushed back against executive action? Well, that's what we're doing today. We are railing about executive actions. Now, it was the prior administration, mind you, but it's executive actions. And I ask you just to use your logic on this, Madam Speaker. Stop and think about this. The EPA passes what they call a decision in a legalistic attempt to get around the law, and that decision that they claim does not fall under the CRA process gives a waiver on federal regulations to a state, California, that then if you opt in 100%, you can't modify it, if you opt in 100% into the California rule, other states, currently a minority of the states, opt into. But because you then create this patchwork, what happens in the industry is everybody starts to move in that direction because, well, if we have to do it in California and 9 other states or 10 other states, then we might as well do it nationally. And so what happens is this is a de facto national regulation that my colleagues on the other side are saying that because they called it a decision instead of calling it a regulation, because they're using a waiver of a regulation, somehow Congress doesn't have any authority. And, Madam Speaker, they would have you believe that this Congress can't make decisions on its own. We have to rely on independent bureaucrats to tell us how to do our jobs. Well, I say to you, Madam Speaker, if the Senate wishes to take a back seat to the unelected bureaucrats, so be it. But as long as I am in the United States Congress, I will fight to make sure that we are at least grabbing what power we can. Now, as they heard me say yesterday in committee, I think we give too much to the various secretaries. I think we give too much to the executive branch. But here's a case where we have an opportunity, Madam Speaker, to grab power back from the bureaucrats and to say, no, you can't do this. And my colleagues want to rely on legalistic principles from the unelected bureaucratic class in Washington, D.C. I cannot agree to that. And with that, Madam Speaker, I will yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Texas, my good friend and colleague.
The gentleman's recognized.
I thank the gentleman. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Quite frankly, I can't even believe that our friends across the aisle are complaining. I guess that seems to be their habit, their modus operandi these days. Madam Speaker, House Republicans are fighting tooth and nail to undo the damage President Biden's radical agenda. Maybe that's why they're complaining, come to think about it. What his agenda inflicted on our economy, our freedoms, and the American way of life. It's just that simple. This week, we are moving to overturn yet another reckless regulation, this time targeting the very backbone of our supply chain, American truckers. Under Biden, I call him old Biden because I think he's Obama's third term, we had a shortage of truckers. Madam Speaker, this was Washington bureaucrats trying to do California's dirty work. I mean, don't our bureaucrats here have enough work to do on their own? This is a direct hit on our truckers. I know, I ran a small trucking business for a short time. On our small businesses and anyone who relies on affordable, reliable transportation, which quite frankly is just about every American. Let's be real. This isn't about cleaner air. Never was, never gonna be. It's about control. It's about forcing a one-size-fits-all green agenda on the rest of the country. I might say the unsuspecting country, regardless of what it costs working families, what it costs farmers, job creators, and yes, truckers. They just don't care. This CRA sends a clear message, Madam Speaker. Republicans stand with the men and women who keep America running. We stand with Americans for common sense. So I couldn't be more prouder to be here with my colleague for this bill. I urge my colleagues to support this resolution. In the words of the truckers, let's slam the brakes on, Madam Speaker, and put this nonsense back and put America back in the driver's seat. Madam Speaker, I yield back.
I reserve.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll yield 4 minutes now to the gentleman from New York, Mr. Tonko, who is the ranking member of our Environment Subcommittee.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the gentleman from New Jersey for yielding. I rise in opposition to this Congressional Review Act resolution. The 3 CRA resolutions being considered today target Clean Air Act federal preemption waivers that authorize stronger pollution standards for cars and trucks for the state of California. Now, Ranking Member Pallone and others have explained how these resolutions go far beyond what is legally allowable under the Congressional Review Act, and how the Clean Air Act clearly authorized California to pursue and be granted these waivers, as has been the case for many, many times over in the past 50 years. Now, I understand that many Republicans in Congress do not like that California is able to take steps to address its extraordinary air pollution from the transportation sector. But they are in luck. They control the House, they control the Senate, and President Trump is in the White House. If the majority wants to directly attack states' rights and prevent California from developing more ambitious public health protections, they could propose an amendment to the Clean Air Act to change the law and end the waiver process. But no one has proposed this because it would require hearings and markups and convincing people of the merits of upending more than 50 years of Clean Air Act precedent, which has been the most successful public health law in history. So instead, we are here today debating a shortcut, a Congressional Review Act resolution, as we have done time and time again this year, as a quick way to undermine environmental rules rather than doing the hard work of actually legislating. Because if we dug into this legislative history of the Clean Air Act, it would be clear that Congress carefully crafted the law to recognize the diverse air pollution challenges facing each state. We would also have a chance to understand how so many innovations have occurred, not only because of the law broadly, but specifically because California has been able to pursue more protective standards. So the process that has resulted in us debating this resolution today is all wrong, but it's also bad on the merits. The Advanced Clean Trucks program is going to make major contributions to reducing air pollution in California. And of course, this rule would only apply to California. Beyond that, every other state would be able to decide what works best for them. And despite what has been suggested, this rule never requires 100% zero-emission vehicle sales for any class of truck. Both new and used diesel-powered trucks, buses, and vans will be available for purchase in California and elsewhere in our United States. The rule also includes numerous flexibility measures to help auto manufacturers comply with the standards. The reality is there are hundreds of different models of zero-emission, medium, and heavy-duty vehicles available for sale today. Major fleets are making the conversion to pollution-free vehicles. Prices are coming down and more charging infrastructure is being built. And perhaps most importantly, these vehicles have the potential to contribute to a tremendous reduction in greenhouse gas emissions and traditional air pollution. Reducing this pollution will indeed improve health outcomes, result in fewer hospitalizations and missed days of school and work, and avoid thousands of premature deaths. Let's stop with this CRA overreach and attack on states' rights to allow California to move forward with ushering in the next generation of heavy-duty vehicle innovation. So with that, Madam Speaker, I urge members to oppose this resolution, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman from New Jersey reserves. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I now recognize the gentleman from California for 3 minutes.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Our governor in California, Gavin Newsom, likes to say that California leads the nation. And unfortunately, President Biden enabled him to do just that, to lead our nation down a path of total insanity in a way that puts us at war with common sense, with American consumers, and with our fantastic truckers. California has come after truckers in every way you can imagine, whether it's by far the highest diesel tax in the country, the regulation after regulation after regulation that makes more and more trucks unusable, or AB 5 that went after the independent owner-operator model and threatened to put thousands of truckers out of work. But with this regulation, the state came after the whole ball of wax. They said, we're going to take your truck itself. With this regulation, the state said that by just the year 2035, but we're going to have for some classes of trucks, 55% have to be zero-emission vehicles, for others 75%, for others 40%. So what is the practical consequence of this going to be? Well, first, trucks are going to be a lot more expensive, thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars more expensive. Companies, they're either going to have to buy more trucks or they're going to have to carry less in their trucks because there's less capacity because of the weight of the battery. And by the way, they're going to have to rely on use infrastructure, charging infrastructure that doesn't even exist at this point in time. So American consumers, as we're seeing already in California, will see the cost of just about everything, certainly the cost of groceries, go up. And this will only contribute to the fact that we have a shortage of truck drivers in our state and in this country. And yes, California is being allowed to create policy for the whole country because 11 states are tied to California's actions here, and because it puts manufacturers in a dilemma if they have to manufacture one truck for one state and another truck for another state. So today, we are restoring common sense. We are restoring uniformity when it comes to interstate commerce. We are restoring support for our truckers, and we are lowering costs for consumers. And by the way, we believe fully in innovation, and we believe in a clean energy future for this country. We believe in clean air, but it is through innovation that we will get to clean air. It is not by government fiat. Indeed, it is an odd approach to innovation that says we are going to somehow magically fiat innovation by banning any and all available alternatives. That is not the way it works. And finally, to the notion from the gentleman from New Jersey that this sets a dangerous precedent. I'll note that no California legislator ever voted on this or the car ban. No member of this House has voted on it. No individual citizen has voted on it. There has been no vote whatsoever on a policy of profound personal consequence to 40 million Californians and tens of millions other Americans. I think that is precisely the precedent, actually putting this to a vote of the people's representatives that we need to set today. I yield back.
I reserve.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield now 4 minutes to the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Matsui, who is the ranking member of our Communications and Technology Subcommittee.
Gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today and speak in opposition to HJRES 87. Heavy diesel trucks are some of the most polluting vehicles on the road. Even though they make up just 10% of all vehicles, heavy-duty vehicles produce more than half of all soot pollution and smog-forming NOx. And the soot and smog pollution from these vehicles kill thousands of Americans every year. For over 50 years, California has had the authority to set its own stronger vehicle emissions rules because California has, to quote the Clean Air Act, compelling and extraordinary circumstances that justify stronger emission standards than the nation as a whole. This was true in 1970 and is still true today. According to the American Lung Association's 2025 State of the Air report, 5 of the top 10 most polluted cities in America are in California, and that includes my district. I-5 and I-80, which crisscross my district, are both major heavy-duty trucking corridors, and the diesel emissions along these corridors create serious air quality issues that directly affect the health and well-being of my constituents. Not only that, these emissions are also a significant contributor to severe weather events. California receives the brunt of climate change's the most severe impacts, from wildfires to atmospheric rivers to drought. In Sacramento, we have faced deadly flooding from more intense winter storms, as well as longer and more extreme droughts. And the foothills above Sacramento are still scarred from the many wildfires we've seen in recent years. California emission standards are a matter of life and death for my constituents. And to protect my constituents, I spend much of my career in Congress fighting for stronger emission standards. I'm once again stunned by the hypocrisy of my Republican colleagues who claim to defend state rights while they do everything in their power to stop California from setting its own statewide emission standards. This is even more absurd because the Government Accountability Office, GAO, has already ruled that the EPA waiver for California's emission standards is not eligible for repeal under the Congressional Review Act. In other words, the legislation we're debating here today is a pointless political exercise, a waste of time, because perhaps my colleagues have nothing better to offer today. The President is playing with tariffs, setting the cost of groceries soaring, and kneecapping American manufacturers. My Republican colleagues will maybe stop debating this meaningless resolution and reassert congressional authority over tariffs. They could end the tariffs this week and bring down costs for your families. I urge my colleagues to vote no on HJRES 87, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman yields. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I'm not against states' rights. I'm against creating a super state in California because they're the only ones that are entitled to get a waiver, and then claiming as the Government Accountability Office that they have some kind of extrajudicial authority to tell Congress how to do its business. I don't agree with that. I believe we make those decisions, not the GAO. And I now yield 3.5 minutes to my good friend from Minnesota on this resolution.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today in support of HJRES 87, which will prohibit California from mandating electric trucks, not only for Californians, but for all Americans. The Biden administration's misguided decision to grant California this waiver has serious implications far beyond the state of California, impacting all Americans, and is an assault on our way of life in northern Minnesota. Madam Speaker, I'm not opposed to Americans having the ability to purchase and drive an electric car or truck or bus if they so wish. In fact, I support the choice to do so. We should support and embrace consumer choice. What I am opposed to is unelected bureaucrats in Washington or Sacramento mandating my constituents purchase and drive an electric car or truck. The people of northern Minnesota, many of them, not only can't afford an EV, these vehicles are not compatible with our daily lives. How are you supposed to drive an electric vehicle when it's 20 below zero, loses 60% of its battery life in a short period of time? And we cannot forget that the critical minerals that are used to make these EVs are sourced from Chinese Communist Party-controlled mines in places like the Congo, where 15 of the 19 industrial mines are owned by the Chinese Communist Party. These mines have zero environmental standards, zero labor standards, and they use child slave labor. Thanks to the Biden administration's refusal to support responsible domestic mining, the de facto EV mandate will only increase our reliance on the Chinese Communist Party for the critical minerals. You see, Madam Speaker, the Biden administration, quote, exported their environmental guilt, end quote. In my hometown, the Duluth Transit Authority bought electric buses in 2018. A big event, ribbon cutting. All the leaders were there. What they didn't tell you was in short order, Madam Speaker, they had to add diesel generator heaters to those electric buses because they wouldn't work in the cold climate. So they were happy they had their electric buses, but they didn't tell everybody they had to spend more money to add diesel-generated heaters to those buses. Madam Speaker, in this town just 2 weeks ago, I spoke at an event, and I condemned child slave labor in the Congo. As I was walking out, a gentleman from one of those mines says he disagreed with me. I said, what do you disagree with? That we use child slaves in our mines. And I said, it's confirmed, it's factual. Not only the Trump administration, but the Biden administration confirmed it. He said to me, Madam Speaker, well, it's only a few children. I said, even one is too much. We will not consume any critical minerals used by child slave labor, and the Biden administration did that. 33% of our cobalt, Madam Speaker, that we use come from child slave labor. When we have mines in northern Minnesota that the Biden administration shut down. I urge my colleague to join me in standing up against these mandates and standing for consumer choice.
The gentleman's time has expired.
I reserve.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield 3 minutes now to the gentlewoman from Oregon, Ms. Maxine Dexter.
The gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today in strong opposition to these resolutions that strip away a state's right to protect its residents from dangerous air pollution. As a pulmonologist, a lung doctor, I've spent my career caring for people struggling to breathe, patients with asthma, COPD, and lung cancer. But I'm also a mother, deeply concerned about the world we are leaving our children. I came to Congress after years of treating the consequences of inaction. I could no longer stand by while politicians ignored the root cause, the pollution poisoning the air we breathe. The truth is, Madam Speaker, our air is making us sick, and we have the power and responsibility to do something about it. More than 156 million people in this country live in counties with dangerous levels of ozone and particulate matter. And yet, instead of empowering states to raise the bar on clean air, Republicans are telling them to stand down. Let me say this another way. Republicans are telling states they cannot take action to protect their people, their health, and their future. They want to prevent states who are at the forefront from using their authority to cut tailpipe pollution, a move that guts local authority in favor of polluters. We must let our communities lead. Repealing these waivers would undermine stronger vehicle emission standards that reduce dangerous pollution and are essential to fighting the climate crisis. Make no mistake, that would have immediate impact for our communities, for every family living near a busy highway, every child using an inhaler, and every senior who can't go outside on a high pollution day. This is a direct attack on over 50 years of precedent that recognizes that EPA has the authority and the obligation to allow states to do what is required to protect their residents. I'm frankly stunned that my Republican colleagues in the House want to undermine states' rights. Repealing these waivers are an illegal expansion of the use of CRAs, which the Government Accountability Office and the Senate parliamentarian have conclusively determined cannot be used for this purpose. This is government overreach at its most reckless. And it's a distraction, a deliberate one, from the fact that President Trump's agenda is failing to meet the needs of working families. It doesn't lower prescription costs. It doesn't fix our crumbling infrastructure, and it certainly doesn't improve the air our children breathe or the water they drink. At the end of the day, every American deserves the right to breathe clean air. Clean air shouldn't be political. Clean air shouldn't be anything but fundamental. To the people of Oregon, please know, I see these attacks for what they are. I hear your concerns, and I will not stop fighting to protect you, your children, and your future. I will fight to ensure that science, not politics, guides how we safeguard our communities. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Does the point of parliamentary inquiry, did the gentleman from New Jersey reserve? Oh, okay.
Oh, did the gentleman from New Jersey reserve?
You want us to reserve? We'll continue to reserve.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I now recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Lamoffa, for 5 minutes.
The gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity. As a Californian resident and also as a California businessman, we have a farm in Northern California where we actually operate 3 highway trucks. And I would probably only have 2, except for state mandates, make it to where one of my older trucks, which is a fine running vehicle, is only allowed 1,000 miles per year to operate under an agricultural situation. So I had to buy yet another truck that was newer than 2011 in order to be able to comply with these mandates. And so soon after, when the state has said, well, if you buy a 2011 or newer engine powered truck, you're going to be good for a long time. That's until they change their mind and take away what many people did. It was purchase in good faith vehicles they thought would last for maybe 20 years, 25 years, or whatever their needs are. Especially talk about mom and pop operations that don't buy new trucks with massive turnover, like operations with many, many trucks in their fleet that run them 500,000 miles and turn them over. So what we have with these mandates is more and more difficulty to even operate trucks. And there's an old saying, if you got it, a truck brought it. Well, in California, you may not be getting it anymore, because by the time 2035 comes around and they ban the sale of internal combustion engine trucks and cars in California, what are we going to replace them with? And that takes no account for the great strides that are made to make cleaner running diesel engines in all these vehicles, and gas engines in automobiles and pickups. With the technology, we have to add this DEF fluid to our vehicles to make sure that they're running in compliance. And so what credit is given to that as a transition to more and more of these trucks meeting this mandate helps deliver cleaner air quality? No credit is given. It's just more mandates. CARB sits down there in Sacramento thinking up more and more mandates all the time, taking away barbecues and gas-powered stoves and gas-powered everything, even gas-powered generators. I still don't know what you're supposed to replace a generator with if you can't power it on gas or diesel when the power goes off. So it's ridiculous what's coming down the pike. And so where California goes, there's several other states that want to follow as well because they think we got it going on with these mandates. So you take away these trucks, you take away the ability to have diesel-powered vehicles, which diesel, like it or not, is going to power things for many decades to come, because the technology for batteries and the generation of electricity that's needed to keep all these going on the grid. I mean, if you have, say, in a neighborhood where 3 or 4 cars and 3 or 4 homes are electric vehicles requiring that power supply, you have to change the power lines in the transformer in the neighborhood by the time just a few of these vehicles are in place due to the intense load that's required to fast charge these vehicles, let alone a truck fleet in a particular area. If there's 50 trucks or whatever in an operation, all required to be on electricity and charging overnight, the grid people are going to laugh at you on that. And this is at the same time as in California they're removing hydroelectric dams. They may not renew the nuclear power plant at San Luis Obispo, known as Diablo Canyon. They got a 5-year extension a couple years ago. Is it going to go beyond that? That plant alone represents 9% of the power grid of California. So they keep taking away the generation of power. They don't permit the new generation of power, except for wind and solar, where they want to turn farms in Central Valley into now solar farms, perhaps. Well, take a look at the Ivanpah installation down in Southern California, where 2/3 of that is being shut down, where they have the giant tower and the mirrors all pointed at it. That one's being shut down due to the economics on that. So the economics on renewable power don't work out. Where's the power going to come from? Who's going to drive the trucks? How are you going to get deliveries when these vehicles aren't purchased? The price of these is 2.5 times what a regular truck costs. Now, if people would pass my legislation on the federal excise tax, making the $20,000 to $30,000 of additional tax, a tax that was put in place to pay for World War I on the price of new trucks, maybe people have a little more relief. But we do not need this mandate. The federal government should not be giving California more waivers. Back in the 60s, sure, when things were bad in Southern California, but air quality has improved vastly due to these vehicles, and other measures have been taken. Agriculture has had the ability to burn its refuse and its clippings and tree removal and all that. That's been banned in the San Joaquin Valley now. So, there's a lot of strides or moves being made, yet they are never satisfied at CARB in Sacramento. And other states are going to monkey see, monkey do what California does to the detriment of all consumers. So all prices of goods delivered, the prices of production, where trucks haul the raw materials and the finished products from field or forest or mine to be manufactured, refined, what have you, the prices just go up across the board. We don't have the battery technology to have these trucks go more than really 150 miles, whereas diesel-powered trucks, depending on how many tanks they put on there, could go 400 miles. So with that, we need to reject new waivers.
The gentleman's time has expired.
I yield back. Thank you.
I reserve. The gentleman from Virginia reserves. Thank you. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 3 minutes now to the gentleman from California, Mr. Sam Liccardo.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in opposition of HJRES 87 as well as HJRES 88 and 89. I wish I were here to speak about different policies that the American people actually want to see to help them pay their bills, to lower the cost of living that is choking millions of American families. Instead, in this administration's first 100 days, I've seen this Republican majority capitulate to the largest sales tax in U.S. history in the form of Trump tariffs, costing the average American family perhaps $4,900 annually at the checkout counter. I've seen this Republican Congress authorize the imposition of even more excessive overdraft fees, which will cost American consumers another $5 billion. Where is the action to help Americans pay their bills? You won't find it in any of these three measures. Instead, my Republican colleagues seek to undermine waivers from federal regulations that California and 13 other states have relied upon for half a century to protect our clean air. This waiver has done much to clear the once smoggy air of the Golden State, and eliminating these standards will result in the release of 1.6 billion metric tons of pollutants into the air. That pollution will imperil our children, our seniors, and the tens of millions who suffer from respiratory ailments like asthma and COPD. As if the harm to our health and environment isn't enough, the GOP proposals in each of these three measures will cost American citizens even more in their pocketbooks. Over the next 15 years, eliminating these fuel standards will increase American spending at the gas pump by $89 billion. And even if you adjust for different purchasing costs of vehicles, Americans will still pay $55 billion more out of pocket because of these efforts to make our cars and trucks less fuel efficient. Indeed, it will also cost us in higher medical bills. The waiver for Advanced Clean Car 2 rule will save California some $13 billion in spending on health care for respiratory ailments. And the health and cost benefits are even greater under the heavy-duty truck regulations. In heavy and medium-duty truck sector, we are seeing zero and low-emission trucks that are 2 years ahead of schedule in sales set by California requirements. So to my friends on the other side of the aisle, the global industry and the market have left you behind. House Republicans have no agenda to lower the cost for American people, so they're putting on this political kabuki show attacking California for political benefit. So let's talk about California despite our many faults. My state has used this waiver and these clean air standards to clear skies that were once filled with smog when I grew up there in the 1970s, and in building the world's fourth largest economy, larger than Japan, India, UK, and yes, even Texas. I'm not entertained by this kabuki, and the American people aren't either. But you know what would entertain them? If we actually did something to lower their costs.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from New Jersey reserves. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I now recognize the gentleman from Michigan, home of a large part of our manufacturing base for automobiles, Mr. James, for 6 minutes.
Nice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Chairman Guthrie and Griffith, I want to thank you and your staff for your professionalism, especially on moving this important measure forward. I rise to speak in support of HJRES 87, my resolution of disapproval to overturn the Biden administration's California Advanced Clean Trucks rule. Mr. Chairman, I am kind of disappointed, but not surprised at my colleagues' lack of understanding for exactly what we're trying to do here. But I would expect bad faith negotiations here and elsewhere. But let me just highlight a couple of points that we've heard over the recent few minutes. Lowering prescription drug costs. I wonder what my colleagues think about our truck drivers and how their life-saving drugs get to their constituents. I wonder if they just appear out of thin air, or maybe the trucks that carry these things will actually just get there on unicorn tears and hopes and dreams. That doesn't happen. We actually need trucks to get our life-saving drug life-saving drug medications to the pharmacies at lower cost. And if you increase the number of trucks because you increased the number of trucks that you require because you've increased the payload capacity, you are going to actually do more harm than good. Let's talk about infrastructure. Apparently, my colleagues think we're doing nothing to address infrastructure when literally their plan will contribute directly to crumbling infrastructure due to the heavy weight of these trucks, which could also crash through barriers, which would endanger lives, which would also make sure that, the number of 45,000 fatalities in this country would increase. I wonder how many American lives they would sacrifice on the altar of their Green New Deal initiatives. Also, literally, how do we pay for these roads, Mr. Speaker? We pay for these roads with gas taxes. And the gas taxes that these trucks would not be paying would take directly from the funds that we need to build our roads all across the country. In addition to air pollution, Republicans care about clean air. We care about clean water. We also care about common sense. Maybe in California they can plug their trucks into a tree, but in the rest of the country, we are relying on an energy grid that is still at least half reliant on an all-of-the-above approach where we have economical, reliable energy, and you're still including things like natural gas and coal. These are the types of things that happen in the real world, and common sense applies in other areas outside of California, like in Michigan. We're not afraid of the future, but we demand to be a part of it. America called on us during 2 world wars and a global pandemic, and my legislation will ensure that Michigan stands ready to answer the call once again. My family is no stranger to how important the trucking industry is. My father started a trucking business with 1 truck, 1 trailer, and no excuses. And then a generation later, I started a trucking company during the COVID pandemic. He grew up in the Jim Crow South and moved to Michigan in search of opportunity in the American dream, fought tooth and nail harmful regulations and misguided rules that would have prevented his company from ever getting off the ground. Now, more than 50 years later, his son stands before the United States House of Representatives to continue the fight against harmful regulations and misguided rules that put thousands upon thousands of livelihoods at risk. This Biden rule is not just bad policy, Mr. Speaker. It's a scam of a decade, putting California's failed EV policies in charge of the entire trucking industry in Michigan and the United States. Mr. Speaker, does anyone in this chamber actually believe that this is the United States of California? Perhaps Californians, but in Michigan, we do not want to be dictated by Sacramento, and there are about 49 other states that would agree. Gavin Newsom may be content with being the #1 state for declining population, losing nearly 1.2 million Californians from 2020 to 2023. But, Mr. Speaker, I assure you, I am not. This Biden-era waiver allows California to ram its comply or die zero-emission truck rule down the throat of American trucking industry, essentially gutting the trucking industry all across Michigan and across the country. It's a Green New Deal mandate that will crush our trucking industry and drive costs up on everything and increase deaths on our highways. Those are facts. Those are facts. Those are facts. This policy, if left unchecked, would mandate truck makers only, no exceptions, no choice, only sell expensive, less reliable, zero-emissions trucks. This is going to increase the number of trucks required, which is going to increase the cost of everything from gas to groceries. The death of the American trucking industry is not just an unintended consequence of this radical California policy. Mr. Speaker, it's the goal. They intend to set unworkable emission standards that will cripple our supply chains and make it impossible for tens of thousands of trucking companies to do business because they're unwieldy and inconvenient. This policy is unsustainable, unrealistic, and a job killer, and most importantly, is a life ender. Telling the Michigan trucking industry and all other industries that they are willing to move forward with this policy is unacceptable. Today, the House of Representatives will send a resounding no to the radical left and a resounding yes to the middle class, to our job creators, to our employers, to our truckers who keep America running. I urge my colleagues to do simple math, use common sense, and put this Biden-era California waiver to bed once and for all. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Mr. Speaker, may I inquire as to how much
reserves?
I reserve, but may I inquire as to how much time remains on each side?
The gentleman from Virginia has 2.5 minutes. The gentleman from New Jersey has 8 minutes remaining. The gentleman from New Jersey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll yield 3 minutes now to the gentlewoman from Oregon. To the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Luz Rivas.
Gentle lady is recognized.
Thank you for yielding to me. I'm here today to speak against HJRES 87, which will illegally stop California's efforts to work towards a greener and cleaner future through zero-emission trucks. Strong vehicle standards protect Americans from expensive and volatile fossil fuels and accelerate the adoption of cleaner vehicle technologies to help us compete globally. According to the American Lung Association, the LA metro area has the most polluted ozone in the country. This is due to the high concentration of freeways and heavy trucking industry in communities such as those in the San Fernando Valley, like Pacoima and Sun Valley. Stopping these efforts will worsen our air quality and the public health of our communities that are already plagued with the effects of air pollution and vehicles. I'm against this resolution and its goal of stripping California's ability to regulate air pollution and improve public health. Not only are Republicans taking away health care from over 370,000 of my constituents who rely on Medicaid, they are actively worsening the health problems many of them face. This is insult to injury. I urge my colleagues to vote no. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentle lady from New Jersey reserves?
I reserve, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman reserves.
Mr. Speaker, I reserve.
The gentleman from Virginia reserves.
I have one more speaker.
New Jersey.
Mr. Speaker, I would now yield 3 minutes to the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Nanette Betegon. Actually, 4 minutes for her.
All right, the gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you, Ranking Member Pallone. I rise today to speak for the families who can't afford to breathe dirty air for another day. I rise for the parents who have rushed their child to the emergency room because the smog outside triggered another asthma attack. And I rise for the young people who have the right to a future free from polluted air, climate disasters, and preventable health crisis. House Republicans are trying to overturn EPA's approval of California's clean air waivers, a move that would strip California's ability to protect its people from dangerous air pollution. This isn't just about California. Over a dozen states voluntarily follow California standards. If we overturn these waivers, families from New York to Oregon will feel it too in their lungs. States are not forced to adopt California standards, but many choose to because of the harm air pollution causes their communities. If these measures pass, more pollution will fill our air. More kids will miss school because they're sick. More seniors will land in a hospital. More families will lose loved ones far too soon to preventable deaths. And billions of dollars will be spent on health expenses that could be avoided. Communities like the ones I represent, low-income neighborhoods near freeways, ports, and warehouses, and working-class communities of color are already breathing some of the dirtiest air in our country. Thousands of people in California and around the country wrote in support of these clean air protections that Republicans want to rip away. Jane Flynn from the LA area wrote to EPA in support of the clean truck rule. Living in Southern California, she says, I see how truck pollution impacts our families, asthma, heart disease, respiratory problems. These aren't just numbers. These are our children, our parents, and our neighbors. Please allow California to enforce stronger clean air protections, end quote. Tia Triplett from Los Angeles wrote to EPA that heavy truck pollution threatens the health of her community and urged stronger protections. House Republicans want to silence these voices. Our constituents don't need more diesel trucks idling near our homes, pumping smog into our lungs. They need cleaner trucks, cleaner cars, cleaner air. Mr. Speaker, we should build a future where a child can play outside without an inhaler in their backpack or around their necks. A future where fewer hospital visits, not more. We should stand with communities fighting for their right to breathe, not keep them polluted. I urge my colleagues to stand with our communities, protect their right to clean air. Vote no. I yield back.
The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
I would reserve, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman reserves.
Mr. Speaker, I reserve and I am prepared to close.
Reserves. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume. I wanted to, Mr. Speaker, what I really want to stress today is that contrary to what the Republicans are saying, the bottom line is that no state is forced to adopt the California rules. I heard from speakers on the other side of the aisle from states that actually don't follow the California rules at all and somehow feel that they're being forced to comply, which is simply not the case. And what you have to understand is the reason why we allow California and states that follow it to do what they're doing is because in those states we have major pollution problems. I heard one of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle talk about a freedom to pollute or a freedom to, choose. I mean, the bottom line is when there's a problem with clean air, you don't really have a choice. You are going to breathe dirty air. So if you're in one of these states like California that feels that they have to have more stricter compliance in order to deal with the clean air problem that they have in their state, it's really not fair to suggest that those states should not be able to deal with that problem and have more stringent standards so they can have cleaner air and they can avoid the health problems for their constituents. That's all we're talking about here. This is not a one-size-fits-all. It's just the opposite. It's a situation where each state makes a decision whether they want to adopt the California standards for their own pollution problems. And I don't think I don't think there should be a freedom to pollute. I mean, the bottom line is that every state has to look out for its own constituents. And if the situation is such that they need cleaner air and they have to try to have some more limitations, they should be allowed to do so. That's all we're really saying here. We want to protect the public and have cleaner air. So for all those reasons, I would urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisles to reject this resolution and allow California and other states like mine to continue to be more protective of their constituents. And with that, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Virginia.
Mr. Speaker, my colleague, the gentleman from New Jersey, who is a great guy and is a good friend, is mistaken in part and correct in part. He's right. It's not one size fits all. It's two sizes fits all. And the other states other than California aren't given an opportunity to determine whether they want to do something that's a little bit different than California, or they want to do something that's a little bit different than the national standard. Now, as Mr. Kiley pointed out in his very good comments on this subject, the problem when California keeps ratcheting up their regulations is that because they are a large economy, as has been pointed out, and because several other states decide to join them, although still a minority, the manufacturers have to look at that and say, well, are we going to manufacture two different types of vehicles for each class? Or are we just going to follow what California has done? So de facto, this is a regulation on the nation as a whole. De facto, this decision by the EPA is a regulation on the entire nation. And that's why this Congress, paying attention to its own responsibilities and not listening to unelected bureaucrats and other unelected officials, must make a decision and vote to pass HJRES 87. It is important for the nation as a whole to protect our trucking industry and to protect jobs across this great land. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Now, hopefully you stay tuned through that whole thing. I know there's a ton of stuff in there, a lot of repetitive stuff. All of these House Joint Resolution debates are pretty darn repetitive. So if you got anything helpful out of it, if there's anything you think I missed, if you think there's anything I should look up, please comment below. If not, hit that like button right now, subscribe, hit the ring bell, and I will see you guys on the next hopefully helpful video. Thanks for checking out Scotty's Hobbies.